Today we're going to look at Mapcite and how it's used in pricing for terrorist and natural catastrophe risk. Here we have Sydney, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at the book of exposure or total insured value of an underwriter's business within the city of Sydney. As we can see, we're just using simple heat mapping techniques, and we can actually see the policies that the underwriter has written has got quite a lot of exposure around the rocks, but for the rest of the central business district it's fairly low risk. That's from a total insured value point of perspective. What we're going to now do is we're now going to factor in different sorts of data such as terrorism targets, such as transport hubs, things like the American Embassy and such. And when we actually bring this all together, we find that the risk profile has changed considerably. We're still exposure in the rocks, but now our exposure has moved to the central business district where we would have previously written or wanted to write more business. This gives some indication on how we can actually use Mapcite and analytics to understand the book of business even better. When we're actually pricing for new business, we can actually click on the location of the business. We can actually load an algorithm, in this instance, vehicle-borne IED, and we can actually run the analytics calculation. And what we'll actually do is it'll actually look at all the factors that affect that particular property, and it'll actually give it a price for probable maximum loss. In this instance, if a 2-ton vehicle-borne IED were to be detonated at that location. Let's move the location and run the query again. And this time you can see the number reduces quite radically from where it currently is to half. So let's overlay some heat map on this to see what it actually looks like in our heat map. And we can actually see when we actually bring the heat map in that the last position we looked at was actually low risk. So actually playing out the fact that we are actually calculating probable maximum loss correctly. So we're now moving it down to the rocks, and we're going to run the calculation again, and it goes up. And now we're looking at the big hotspot in CBD, run the query, and again it's increased, this time to the highest it's actually been. How we actually work this is we're working with the Mapcite terror target database, which is the largest global database of terror targets. And these are the terror targets in Australia, and they go from everything from churches to cinemas to schools to bridges, embassies, banks, and what you would imagine that would be a terror target for a terrorist. So now let's hop off to Manhattan to see what our terror target database looks like in New York, and then across the whole of America. So here we go, Manhattan. And we turn our heat map on, we'll move it to USA terror targets, and we'll populate Manhattan. As you can see, quite a high population of terror targets in America. Zooming out, we'll now get a vision or view of what the entire US looks like in one snapshot. Again, the largest terror target database in the world. There we go.